Welcome once again, fight fans, to DAZN MMA. I'm always here, Sean O'Connell. I'm always joined by Dan Hardy, but we have a little special crossover with our friends in the boxing world and DAZN Boxing. Oh, this is going to be a fun one. Chris Mannix and Sergio Mora stepping in as we digest the aftermath, the outcome of what we all saw this past weekend in Saudi Arabia as the lineal heavyweight champion of the world, Tyson Fury, welcomed a pro debutante, Francis Ngannou, MMA heavyweight champion, PFL MMA heavyweight fighter, who was making his professional boxing debut, as I mentioned. And what a night it was. We've all seen the highlights. We've all seen the results. We all probably watched this 2 or 3 times. First of all, fellas, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. I know this is probably, especially for you, Sergio, not going to be the most fun you've had recording a podcast.
Hey, listen, man, I'm ready for a large piece of my humble pie because you guys were absolutely right about Francis Ngannou and what he brought to the squared circle. I didn't think he had that ability. We knew that he had the power. We all mentioned the power. This was a puncher's chance, but this was more than a puncher. This was a boxer. This was a boxer, Sean, that actually boxed, threw jabs to the body. He didn't engage like we thought he was. He didn't fall off balance when he missed. He was throwing the right shots. He was punching with Tyson Fury. He was actually boxing, man. He was actually utilizing the sweet science, and I didn't think that was possible for a mixed martial artist to do that, especially against the lineal heavyweight champion of the world.
Chris, you have judged a lot of boxing fights. You've evaluated a lot of boxing fights. How did you score this one? Because the debate rages on whether or not the split decision should have gone Tyson Fury's way.
I had it 5-4 Fury at the end of the fight, or 6-4 Fury, 5-4, 95-94, with that knockdown in the third round being included. The punch stats were all incredibly close. Ngannou had a edge on power punches. A lot of them came in that third round when he outlanded Fury 7-1. When he knocked him down. I've heard the cries of robbery. That's not a robbery. I've seen too many robberies in my boxing lifetime. It was a close fight. I thought Tyson Fury edged out largely because he did a lot more in those last 2 rounds than Francis Ngannou did, which takes nothing away from what Ngannou did. I mean, he was in there standing toe-to-toe and, right with the lineal heavyweight champion of the world, a guy that I think is on, the top 10 on the pound-for-pound list. For him to do that in his first pro fight was remarkable. But a robbery, I could name 5 robberies that vastly exceed what that fight was.
Dan Hardy, you were there. You got to digest the atmosphere and the fight live, and I know you've rewatched it because I know how you study fights. Your takeaway, your biggest takeaway from what Francis was able to do in his pro debut.
Well, I mean, I'm agreeing with everything the guys are saying. He surprised everybody, including me. I mean, I predicted Tyson was going to take over in, after sort of 4 or 5 rounds and maybe stop him. But I wasn't expecting that version of Francis, held his shape very well, maintained his composure, didn't bite on any feints or anything like that. It was just all round. It was a surprise. And the biggest thing as well is how he paced himself over the rounds. I mean, he was starting to get tired in the 4th, 5th round, I thought, but I felt like he'd already kind of gained Tyson's respect, so he wasn't going to come crashing into range and just start peppering him with shots. There was a wariness about Tyson, maybe because the Usyk fight's on the horizon, I don't know, but certainly the work he did in the earlier rounds allowed him to kind of maintain the distance a bit more in the later rounds. And I mean, let's be honest, if it was a 12-round fight and if we'd have got the Tyson Fury that we saw against Deontay Wilder, it would have been a different fight. Fury would have won those last 2 rounds. But as I was scoring it on the night, I gave it 1, 2, 3, 4 Ngannou, 5, 6 Fury, 7, 8 Ngannou, 9, 10 Fury. So I had Ngannou winning. I came back. I've watched it 3 or 4 times. I've watched it 4 times. And the only change I make is I change the first round to Fury. So I have 95-94 for Ngannou. And I'm interested because, of course, I'm scoring it from an MMA perspective. And I had conversations with a lot of boxers across the weekend, from Lennox Lewis to Carl Frampton to Frank Bruno, and everybody had a slightly different opinion of it. But there were a lot of boxers that did score it for Ngannou, and I'm kind of wondering, you know, I mean, we have the same thing with the scoring criteria in MMA. Sometimes it can be quite vague, and people have their own biases based on whether they're like power punches or defense or whatever else it is. But I'm interested to know kind of how the fight was scored differently from the way that I was seeing it, because that it's definitely a boxing perspective of scoring, which I don't really understand, I don't think.
Well, whether you thought that it was Francis Ngannou edging out a narrow split decision victory, or maybe you thought he should have got the unanimous nod, or whether you agree with the official judges' scorecards, which of course gave the win to Tyson Fury, it was an inflection point and a moment in combat sports, and especially in the journey and the story for Francis Ngannou. And are you guys movie buffs at all? Do you recall the scene in the Batman trilogy where there's like some little corporate weasel who comes to the Morgan Freeman character, who's kind of like, I don't know, the right-hand man for Bruce Wayne, right? And he says, hey, I found all the funding for this. I know that he's Batman. And Morgan Freeman looks at him and says, you want to blackmail the guy who is a billionaire who goes around beating up thugs for fun or whatever? And rather than like negating anything this guy's saying, he just says, good luck.
Good luck.
I feel like I'm that guy right now, because I had this high hope for Francis Ngannou, and I had this expectation that Francis Ngannou was going to be able to do things that we hadn't seen. I didn't think Francis Ngannou was going to look as good as he did. And I feel like Morgan Freeman is whispering to my ear, like, you're going to doubt the man who emerged from the sand mines of Cameroon and homelessness in Paris and fought his way all the way to the top of the combat sports world in the UFC, and now is an executive basically in the PFL with equity partnership in a rising brand. And he made this crossover, the fight we didn't think he'd even be able to sign. You thought, oh, he's going to do a good job, but Tyson Fury is actually going to take him out. I feel like as much as I would love to gloat, my prediction when we talked about this was that Francis was going to lose this in the later rounds, right? That he was probably going to get TKO'd in the later rounds. And I feel like Morgan Freeman character is saying, you are deciding you want to doubt this man? Like, what are we doing here? Francis Ngannou has showed us time after time after time after time that he does things that nobody else on planet Earth can do. And for some reason, we all hedged and we're careful with our predictions, at least those of us who feel like we're fight experts, right? We were like, yeah, as optimistic as I want to be, I still got to be careful. I still got to be reasonable about this. You don't have to be reasonable when it comes to Francis Ngannou. This guy is a living superhero, damn it. And he is the combat sports champion of the world. I'm talking MMA. I'm talking heavyweight boxing. Put him in kickboxing. He'll probably take out the best one of those guys too. I will not doubt Francis Ngannou ever, ever, ever again. So Chris Mannix, I go back to you. What is next? That's the question on everyone's mind. If we're done doubting him, and we're done making him prove it to us, what is next for Francis Ngannou?
Well, he's got a lot of options, unquestionably. He will get offers to stay in boxing. You know, I'm sure Eddie Hearn is plotting a way to get Francis Ngannou in with Anthony Joshua. You know, we've seen Malik Scott, the trainer for Deontay Wilder, say there are conversations happening about a Wilder-Ngannou fight. I'm not sure how true that is, but you know, there'll be opportunity for him to stay in boxing after that performance. I don't think that's the right move. I think he should go back to mixed martial arts, at least temporarily. You know, he won the night. There's no question about that. Regardless of what you think of the decision, Francis Ngannou was the big winner on that night. If I'm Ngannou, I'm going back to MMA. I'm fighting someone like Junior Dos Santos or Alistair Overeem or any of these guys that might be available to him fighting in PFL. I'm, you know, building maybe a winning streak there in the sport that I'm truly dominant at. And then I'm kind of watching what happens between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. Let's say hypothetically that Fury goes out and beats Usyk. He's probably going to have to beat him twice because I believe it's a 2-fight deal between Fury and Usyk. Let's say he does that over the next 6-7 months. The biggest fight in boxing is going to be Ngannou against Fury in like November or December of next year. Like that, it becomes a major event where Ngannou could theoretically fight for the undisputed heavyweight championship. Like what an accomplishment that would be. That would be even bigger. I mean, it's a great accomplishment to hang in there and fight a razor close fight against Tyson Fury. It would be a nice accomplishment to beat Anthony Joshua, but that's not easy. It would be a nice accomplishment to beat Deontay Wilder. That's a very different fighter than Tyson Fury. If I'm Francis Ngannou, I'm going back. I'm doing PFL. I'm fighting mixed martial arts fights. I'm drawing a big crowd. I'm making a boatload of money. And then this time next year, maybe we're sitting here doing this exact same show talking about Fury Ngannou 2, only this time it's for the undisputed heavyweight boxing championship of the world.
You gave me goosebumps just bringing up that possibility. Dan Hardy, what do you think about that game plan? Obviously, we want to see him back inside the PFL Smart Cage. I said it the last time we all talked together. I'd like to see him welcome a professional heavyweight boxer. And there's been some conversation that, at least Deontay Wilder might be interested in something like that. What do you think is next for Francis?
Well, I mean, you make a good argument. I mean, the thing is, if he stays in boxing and he fights somebody else, say he takes on an Anthony Joshua and he doesn't look as impressive as he did, he might take the rematch with Tyson off the table. So that, that it is smart to go back to MMA. I, of course, as a bias, would love to see him back in the small gloves. But, who based on the opponents, I don't know what's going to interest me as much as something like a Deontay Wilder fight. I mean, we saw Deontay Wilder put the PFL gloves on the other week when he was in Atlanta. I would love to see him cross over. I would love to see a matchup on both sides with big gloves and small gloves. I think there's a lot of options for him. I really do, and I hope we do get the Fury rematch at some point. I really, really do want to see the Usyk fight though, and I'm intrigued as to how that's going to play out, because honestly, I feel like we get a better Tyson Fury after having that close call against Ngannou, because I feel like it kind of will wake him up a little bit, like he looked to me like he was halfway through a training camp for Usyk. He didn't look like he was at the end of a training camp for Ngannou, right? And I've got to wonder whether the additional motivation that he's going to get from that fight is going to make him a far more difficult prospect for Usyk. So I'm excited about that. As far as Ngannou, I don't know. I'm just trying to rack my brains as to who in mixed martial arts, aside from a John Jones, would really interest me right now. I mean, we've got the winner of the championship this year, Fajeda against Goltsov. Both of those guys would be a really fascinating fight for Ngannou, and definitely that could bridge the gap between that and his return to the square ring. But wow, I mean, it just fascinating that we're having these conversations. I mean, I like the Anthony Joshua fight for him. I would quite like to see a Joe Joyce fight, to be honest, because stylistically, I think that's a really good matchup for him. I mean, like I feel like Tyson's probably the most difficult person for him to beat in the heavyweight division based on his style and his build and his movement. So I feel like maybe some of the other heavyweights he might have a bit more success with.
Nick, for you, this is a two-part question. Do you want to see what Francis Ngannou can do now as a heavyweight boxer, a full-time boxer? And does it change how you feel about that Usyk-Fury matchup that was made while he was supposed to be training for Francis?
It definitely changes the narrative on fighting Usyk. I mean, as it was, I talked to Chris Mannix about this on our show all the time. Usyk's going to give everyone trouble, including Fury, because of his footwork, his angles, his amateur pedigree, the way he comes in and out. I always say he's a heavyweight Lomachenko. So I was going to favor Usyk with Fury even before this fight. Now I'm definitely going to favor Usyk over Fury. So Ngannou, going back to what Chris Mannix said about him going back to the PFL, he can't lose either way. He's gonna make a lot of money, but he's gonna make more money, way more money in boxing. That's the reason he crossed over in the first place. On his pro debut, guys, he gave the heavyweight champion of the world, the unblemished, undefeated lineal champion of the world, all he could handle, where he probably could have lost, definitely dropped him, definitely hurt him, and got his respect. Why not do it again against another vulnerable heavyweight? Heavyweights are all vulnerable. Deontay Wilder, knocked out, vulnerable. Anthony Joshua, knocked out, vulnerable. These guys are a little bit chinny themselves. Ngannou, if his power is real, and we all know that it is now, why not make a boatload of money? I mean, if there's a boatload of money in boxing, if you really compare the two pay purses in UFC and boxing, and UFC is kind of a minnow. You know, and you got the Titanic of purses over here in boxing. So stick with boxing. Even if you lose, you're still collecting the money. I mean, people are still going to watch. I'm going to watch. And I was the biggest hater of it because I know what this man could do. I know what Francis Ngannou can do in the boxing ring. And it's more than just standing up square like most UFC guys because they have to worry about kicks and everything else, takedown. No, he was sideways. He was patient. He was calm. He countered. He jabbed to the body, punching with his opponent. These are all things fighters with a lot of experience, especially on the championship level, do. This man did it when he was 0-0 as a professional fighter. Now that he's 0-1, and that one is against Tyson Fury, give him another fight. I'll definitely tune in. I say stay in boxing.
Sergio, I think though, he's probably got one more crack at this, right? Like he fought well against Tyson Fury, but nobody's sitting there thinking like the WBC said they might rank him in the top 10. If they do that, I'm going to lose my mind. Like if you give a guy that fought well against Tyson Fury a top 10 ranking, that's crazy to me. I think he's got one more crack at the apple here at making bank, at making the biggest bank. And look, Joe Joyce could be interesting, but the shine's off Joe Joyce after Zheli Zhang put him on the canvas twice. I think a Wilder fight is interesting in PFL. The Wilder talks more about fighting these days than actually fights. And AJ, it's another guy where AJ could be interesting, but AJ I think is for a guy like Ngannou, AJ might even be more dangerous because AJ's got a lot more raw power than Tyson Fury has. I think if you're Ngannou, you take this moral victory, if you want to call it that, and go do your thing in mixed martial arts and then just see how things play out. Like if you want to fight Anthony Joshua next year, the money's still going to be there. If you want to fight Deontay Wilder next year, the money's probably going to be there. The real money, though, is in the Fury rematch. Like that's where the real money is going to be. And that money increases exponentially if Fury can get his act together, which I think he will. We can get into that if we want. But if Fury can get his act together, I think if he becomes undisputed, that makes that a huge, huge purse for Francis Ngannou.
Does this open up, Chris, I'll stay with you. Does this open up the possibility for these crossover super fights with other weight classes, other mixed martial arts stars? I mean, Conor McGregor's been calling out Canelo for 100 years, and everyone laughed at it because we already saw what happened when he fought Floyd Mayweather, right? Now we see this, and we see what happens when an MMA star takes a year and really invests in himself in boxing specifically. Does the boxing world have to take this a little bit more seriously now? The possibility that elite level MMA fighters can come over and cause problems regardless of the weight class.
There's two questions there, right? Does it open the door for more? Absolutely. I would love to have seen like a live camera on Sean O'Malley when this fight was playing out because he's been calling out Gervonta Davis, and now he has got tape to point out that like, look what Francis Ngannou, a heavy hitter, did to Tyson Fury. I'm a heavy hitter. Look what I'll do to Gervonta Davis. Same thing with Conor McGregor. He can now claim that a Canelo fight is even bigger. Do they have to be more concerned about it? Sure. You've got to take it seriously. And that's where I kind of come back to with Tyson Fury. It's not disrespectful to Francis Ngannou in his performance to say that Tyson Fury looked awful. Like I have been covering this guy for more than 10 years, really dating back to his Steve Cunningham fight in the US. And I was at that fight. I called that fight, and I've been at many of his fights, including the Wilder fights since then. This was by far the worst I've ever seen Tyson Fury look. This was a shell of the fighter that waged war over 40 some odd rounds with Deontay Wilder. The guy that battered and knocked out Dillian Whyte. The guy that battered and stopped Derek Chisora. This wasn't the same guy. And Dan kind of brought it up. Like Tyson Fury did look like a guy that was like halfway through a training camp and not through a training camp. I mean, he came in on Friday 10 pounds heavier than he was against Derek Chisora. That was your first warning sign that even though Tyson's never going to be this Greek god, he wasn't in the kind of shape he needed to be in. The right hands weren't there. The jabs weren't there. So there are two reasons why. It's either Tyson Fury at 35 has lost it. He's lost a step, or he didn't take this fight seriously enough. He didn't train hard enough, and he just wasn't ready. I'm more inclined to believe the latter in that sense. And I think for Ngannou, you're probably going to get a much better version of Tyson Fury the next time around.
No, man, you gotta give Francis Ngannou credit for the game plan he followed. Don't stop.
I did.
Stop taking credit for
I
what
didn't.
Ngannou
I
did.
literally just
but you're saying that Tyson
nothing
Fury
away from it.
Tyson Fury took this fight serious. He said he trained 10 months for this fight. What, he overtrained?
Nobody
Maybe,
in the world
that.
trained 10 months for a fight. Literally nobody said he trained 10 months for a fight. You're making that number up.
You know what? I'm going to check my sources. All right, he definitely trained for this fight. He definitely promoted this fight. He definitely was overconfident in this fight. And let me tell you something else. Every boxer in boxing right now, including myself, I will come back and fight after 5 years retired against an MMA guy in an exhibition type fight, and I won't even train more than 2 weeks because that's the hubris that I would have. That's the overconfidence I would have. And Ngannou just, shut those thoughts down. I'm not gonna feel that way about, a puncher. If an MMA fighter can actually punch, and he's had some kind of boxing background, and I see that he's kind of smart with his fight IQ, he just doesn't come attack me, he's gonna give any issue to a fighter for the first couple of rounds, especially if he has power.
No, sir. One thing, that Dan, you were sitting there. Like I knew this was a different fight from the first round. Ngannou came in with a game plan, right? Like, and that probably flowed through Dewey Cooper. Like, Mike Tyson's kind of there as a gimmick. Like, Absolutely. Dewey Cooper's the guy with the game plan. Ngannou's out there, and everybody thought he was going to start throwing rights. He's throwing lefts the entire time, and that threw Tyson Fury off. He switched to southpaw in like the second round. I have never seen Tyson Fury switch to southpaw for that long. Like, he made a decision that I've never seen him make, or rarely seen him make, for most of his professional career. So that's where you give credit to Ngannou. He was not just there and ready physically. He had a good game plan, and he followed that game plan to a T.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, I think, not only did Ngannou get in there with a good game plan, but Fury got in there with an expectation of what Ngannou was going to be, right? Like, I think he was expecting Ngannou to be crashing into range, to be biting on feints and swinging and punching air, and, ultimately find himself in the clinch because he didn't know what else to do. And then Tyson can tie him up and exhaust him. But, that wasn't what he got. And I think in the first round, when he realized that Ngannou was going to stand at range and kind of counter punch and pot shot a little bit, it kind of unnerved him, because then he realized he had to like smoke out the attack of Ngannou, which wasn't very easy because Ngannou was pacing himself over 10 rounds. He talked about this yesterday in his interview. Like, he had 10 rounds in mind, so he knew he couldn't bite on the feints and exhaust himself. It was a clever game plan. It was an unexpected game plan, and it was exactly the opposite of what Fury would have been expecting. Even if he did train for, do a full training camp for it, if you're training in the wrong direction and you arrive at the fight and you get an entirely different look, like, it can throw you off. I mean, one thing I will say is that I do think Tyson really regrouped well. To be under that kind of pressure, to go down like that, to pull the fight back the way he did in the later rounds was impressive, because you've got the pressure of the Usyk fight. You've got a star-studded cast sitting there next to you. You know what I mean? Like, people that I'm sure Fury's looked up to his whole life, the likes of Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield. And, like, there are a lot of people there that he wouldn't want to have had that performance in front of. And he still was able to pull it back together. And that's the strength of Tyson Fury for me, is his mentality, his ability to kind of gather himself, whether it's, over his lifetime, over a number of months and years, or whether it's, in the space of a few rounds. That was very impressive for me. And I think that, few people would be able to do that when they're in that certain situation.
Snake, the great subplot in this fight was that Tyson Fury came in waving the banner for boxers all over the world, and the hopes and dreams of MMA fighters were in the hands of Francis Ngannou. And now when you're on your champions only, boxing insiders only group text thread, and you get called to the secret dinners that none of us are invited to because we're MMA guys, are those conversations different? Did Francis Ngannou change the narrative around mixed martial artists being pure strikers, being able to hang with boxers permanently?
No, he didn't change the narrative, but on the flip side, Tyson Fury disappointed the sweet science, disappointed boxing fans, disappointed all the proponents of boxing, saying, well, are you kidding me? They can never stand a chance in a boxing ring. That's all out the window because of one bad night. Whether you want to make up all the excuses in the world for Tyson Fury, he's the heavyweight champion who's never been beaten, and he almost got beat by a man who never fought, who never boxed. So that right there is humiliating. It makes me question, whether more of these MMA guys can actually, turn into boxing. And above all this, Sean, I got to eat my crow. I'm a man of my word.
He is a man of his
Eat
word.
it.
Well, I appreciate it. He's gonna chew that thing and swallow it.
No. Eat it. Eat it.
Before we get out of here, has the baddest man on the planet, has that title been decided, at least for now? Because Francis Ngannou, again, it's a loss officially in the books. Whether you want to carry on that debate for the next week or months or for the rest of the year, I don't care. What we saw was an incredible performance out of Francis. We know that financially he won. We know that the moral victory is there. He's claiming baddest mother bleep on the planet, and it feels like he's got firm legs to stand on there. Dan Hardy, has it been decided?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I mean, just to step out of his own sport and step straight in at the top like that and give the performance that he did. I mean, that qualifies him alone. And, and then you look at the fight, you look at the damage that was received and the fact that one of them went down, not the other, 5 additional power punches, for Francis. Like for me, I mean, he is the baddest man on the planet just for taking that challenge on. And, we go back to it. If Fury comes over to mixed martial arts, it's a very different fight. If you give Francis Ngannou a calf kick to use in a boxing match, it's a very different fight. There are so many other things that Francis had to shelf that are a part of fighting that he wasn't able to use in that fight. If anything, it was Tyson Fury throwing the elbows and then bouncing off Ngannou's face. That was wild. Did you see the elbow that he landed? It was nice.
The slow motion replay of that elbow landing and Francis just shaking it off. Baddest man on the planet, Chris Mannix. Is that Francis Ngannou?
That was the cheapest of cheap shots. That was an intentional elbow. Like Tyson can fake it and say he was trying to throw a different punch. That was an elbow. He was trying to hit him exactly as he hit him. I don't like. It was a fun fight, right? It wasn't Gotti Ward, right? And then like for this to be decide the baddest man on the planet, I need to see 2 bad men kind of going at it. Like neither one of them landed more than 40 power punches in this fight. Ngannou led 37-32 in that category. Tyson led in total landed punches 72 to 60 something. Like I don't think anything on that subject alone. No, I don't think the baddest man on the planet was ultimately decided. I think Ngannou surprised everyone and made you believe he's got a future in 2 combat sports, which you can't say about anybody that's out there right now. But a fight that has so few punches landed, I need something more to label someone the baddest man.
All right. Chris is not going to give the title to Francis Ngannou, but Sergio, I think you told us earlier, Tyson kind of embarrassed boxing. Does that mean he can't claim that title anymore because of his performance against Francis?
That's the thing, man. You're only as good as your last performance in this sport. And if that was Tyson's Fury, that's his last performance. That's the last thought we have of him. So yeah, he has to make that up. As of right now, Francis Ngannou in both combat sports, because he crossed over to our sport and fought the heavyweight champion. How can you not say he's the baddest man on the planet? He didn't have to beat Tyson Fury. We expected him to get embarrassed. Not only did he compete, he dropped, he knocked down, he gave Tyson Fury a black eye. He was unscathed. That's the baddest man on the planet. This professional former world champion is telling you that, because now mind you, there's a little bit of hyperbole, if that's the word. There's a little bit of showmanship and promotion. I mean, look, when Mayweather fought Canelo, the one. Mayweather won. He became the one. When he fought Pacquiao, I forgot what that was billed, but Mayweather won. Everything is about promotion. So this was about promotion. The baddest man on the planet. As of right now, Francis Ngannou, even though he lost his fight, yeah, you got to give him that title, because, I mean, what that man did, crossing over like that, was spectacular. Everyone has to eat humble pie or crow, whatever.
Dan, one of my favorite things about this fight is that now Francis gets to walk around and claim that, and there's very few people that can argue against it, and they will certainly. But there's another guy out there who likes to call himself that, and his name is John Jones, and he's currently the UFC heavyweight champion of the world, and a lot of us think that he is the best mixed martial artist who ever put on the small gloves. And the only thing standing in the way of that being decided in actual live professional competition is the UFC and Dana White and their contract policies. We just saw a super fight that generated a lot of money, a lot of views, a lot of conversations, a cross-sport promotion where everyone got fed, everyone's pockets got filled, all the fans got what they wanted. And there's just one person standing in the way of that happening with UFC champions in the future, with MMA champions in the future. The PFL has said, we'll co-promote. Bellator is going away, but Bellator hasn't been shy about co-promoting. Now we're looking at the top boxing promotions on planet Earth being willing to co-promote, even with mixed martial arts organizations. There's only one person, Dan, standing in the way of giving the fans of combat sports worldwide what they want. I love the pressure that this fight put on that man and that entity.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been enjoying the clips of the video of the press conference of, he doesn't want to take chances, quote, flying around the internet. I've seen
name,
it almost
guys.
as many times.
Wait. Say his name. I know what you're talking about. Dana White. There you go. Thank you. Dana White.
Said it.
I said it. Dana White is the guy. He who shall not be named. Dana White, look, respect to Dana White for helping build the UFC into what it is now, but you are a roadblock at the moment for giving combat sports fans what they want, giving fighters the opportunities and the paydays that they need. I mean, you can make this bigger and better than it's ever been in combat sports. You can, Dana White. You specifically can. You can give us John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. Pete Murray, Don Davis, Francis, the PFL side of things, they have said, yes, we will do it. You are the one who says, no, I won't. Tyson Fury said, I'll do it. Deontay Wilder says he'll do it. Go ahead.
You know why that's such a big event is because I'm talking about John Jones against Francis Ngannou, is that I would buy it. And look, I just rattled off some names that Francis Ngannou could fight. I only know that because I Googled it. Like I don't know anything about Junior Dos Santos. I don't know anything about.
I know because he's beaten one of them and the other one's retired.
Yeah, I'm just I saw it topped the list on Google. Like MMA fighting, I listed that somewhere. Like John Jones, I have no idea who he could fight either. I don't know who's fighting in the PFL heavyweight championship. If these two guys fight someone separately, I'm not coming near it. If they fight each other, 100%. Take my $75, $80. I will buy it, and I guarantee you there are a legion of people that are like me. You will increase your audience, fivefold at least in making a fight like that. If you don't, you're going to shrink it because the casuals, which when it comes to MMA, I am. I'm just not really. I'm happy for Ngannou, but I'm not really interested in seeing him fight in a cage.
Snake, would you buy John Jones versus Francis Ngannou?
I'm a fan of John Jones. I actually have watched John Jones, GSP, and Spider Silva. Those are the three guys that I loved watching fight because what they did, their technique, the things that they did was more than just mixed martial artists. I could see them being great boxers. So I would buy Ngannou and John Jones. I mean, that will be the baddest man on the planet in your side of the world. So yeah, I'll buy it. It'll be a great fight. It'll end in a knockout.
We appreciate both of you guys joining us on DAZN MMA. Snake, I appreciate you facing the music. All MMA fans. I speak on behalf of all MMA fans, right? We accept your apology and your eating of crow. Thank you.
I'm welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Chewing of crow, really. Chewing of crow.